If the person that you love struggles with addiction, you will be last on the priority list to them. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones, and I want to take some time to talk about addiction, which would be something that a person has no control over. And so when we talk about addiction, we talk about things such as substance, drug or alcohol, or prescription pills. It could be gambling, it could be pornography or sex addiction. Those are things that are becoming more common in the addiction world. Gambling, things like that. So when a person has an addiction, their first and primary and relationship and consideration is going to be to that addiction. That means that an addiction isn't a problem, but it's really more of a problematic coping skill. So whatever the addiction is fixing is something that that person is actively choosing to avoid or run from emotionally. And so they're kind of looped into that risk reward circuit where they have a problem. Their addiction is going to help them forget or circumvent that problem, and it's only temporary, but they're always going to be chasing that high. They're going to be chasing that ability to emotionally numb, that ability to escape their problems, and so on and so forth. And so it's always about, getting that high or that escapism, that numbness, that feeling where they just don't have to be thinking about or consumed with that problem or that challenge. And therefore, even if you love them or you're in a romantic relationship with that person, a lot of times you are still going to be on the bottom of the list of their priorities because their first priority is supporting that addiction. How can I fund my addiction? Where can I find access to get more of what I need, and that sort of thing. So they're always going to be sort of chasing that and looking after that. And so, you will be last on the priority list. So it's not uncommon for loved ones who are in a relationship with someone or even have a parent that has an addiction to be forgotten about on their birthday, or not be able to talk about problems in the relationship, or not have their partner check in with them on a day-to-day, just to have conversations and things like that. And just like, hey, how's it going? Because, they may not care about how you're doing because they're so caught up in their addiction and their components of that addiction. And it could seem like, oh, they have other friends and other people, but chances are a lot of people who have addictions typically have friends or people that are also that are also addicted with them. So a lot of times it's not uncommon for an alcoholic to have like drinking buddies or people that enable drinking behavior. So people that will give money or will go buy drinks or take them to the bars and things like that. Those aren't really necessarily real friends. It's just like, oh, these are people that they can surround themselves with when they're in the throes of their addiction. And so a lot of people, if you grew up in an alcoholic, in a family with an alcoholic, or a person that was addicted to drugs, or other, any other addictions, a lot of times the other thing that you may have to deal with in terms of not being the priority is that person's emotional state. The addicted person's emotional state becomes your responsibility. So a lot of times it's not uncommon for you to have to walk on eggshells, for example. So if a person can't get to their substance or what have you of choice, a lot of times what happens is they become irritable, and sometimes even if they do have access to their substance of choice, moods can still shift and become very unpredictable. So again, it's not uncommon for you to have to walk on eggshells and not know what to expect and try to keep things calm within the house just to try to regulate that person, try to, you try to guess to see who is this person going to be when they come home today? What kind of state are they going to be in? Let me try to figure out what's not going to tick them off. Let me take responsibilities for all the problems, and things like that. Also, too, when it comes to responsibilities of the home, such as paying bills, looking out for the kids and so on and so forth. A lot of times people can't be, that are struggling with addictions can't be trusted to manage finances, because they will go and blow all the finances on their addictions and not worry about the consequences up front of their, of their addiction, of their spending habits, until it's too late, until your family is out on the street or what have you. And so, and I think, just to circle back, a lot of people have trouble with saying that they have an addiction. So the person that's struggling with the addiction is typically going to have trouble, but also other people around them are going to have trouble with saying it. But if it is something where a person can't control, and it doesn't matter if they're engaging in that behavior once a week versus 5 times a week. So, for example, I think drinking is a good one. Because there are a lot of people that say, well, I don't drink every day and blah, blah, blah. I only drink, on the weekends when I'm off work. And then what happens is they will go on a binge and drink all weekend, right? And so it's something where the addiction becomes something where they're losing control. It also, I think, if you're taking risk to obtain, and risk could be like if you're spending the mortgage payments, if you're spending money that needs to be going on bills, or if you are going off with a stranger to engage with your addiction. I think that's the other thing. And lastly, what I look at as a mental health professional, and something that I'll share with you to consider, is, does their addictive behavior, does it affect their social, meaning, how they show up in the world with friends, and, do they have friends, and their ability to even socialize with family, their occupational, so their work, their ability to go to work, have a job, go to school, things like that, or emotional behavior. So I look at those, also those 3 components in addition to the risk. But, behaviors even still can be challenging. So you have to decide, and don't leave it up to the person with the addiction to decide if they have an addiction, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times when they're in the bubble, they can't see the fog. They can't see it, or they're going to deny. They're going to minimize the challenges that they may have. So just something for you to think about. You will always be last, or you won't be at first on the priority list. You may not necessarily be last, but you will never be first. And sometimes that even continues after the person kicks their addiction, because they still have to do the emotional and cognitive work to be able to see how their behavior affects others around them. And they still have to work on the relationship building skills and effective communication and so forth.